The movie opens up with the city's dull scenery, old grayish buildings, and a distant, desperate melody playing in the background. The scenery later switches into a vast apartment, where we see different brushes and paint, many sketches hung on the wall, and books lined up along the walls as well, clearly an artist's place. A man is then sitting in front of a mirror, painting himself carefully in silver as he stares at himself, then puts a silver suit on and walks out with a suitcase and an umbrella in his hands. A woman comes rushing into the train station and asks if she missed the train, but no one answers, she's unseen. She then finds a small figurine of a woman holding her face and screaming discarded on the ground and decides to take it with her. She eventually reaches her work-designated area as a temp and is scolded for being late. She's assigned the work of guarding an empty closet, and she takes it. After work, she goes to watch a silent Charlie Chaplin movie, then the scene switches back to the man in silver performing as a street artist. The man, Tim, comes back home to his girlfriend, who is getting ready and dragging him to a work party that he goes to for her sake. Everyone is in suits and acting superficial. Tim sees two guys talking about expensive TVs, bragging about their money, and even speaking of adult films and degrading women. Tim interferes and tells them that there are ladies around and that they should be respectful. The two men dismiss him and keep talking about TVs. Tim's girlfriend then interferes and drags Tim away, telling the men that he's joking, and Tim is displeased. Janice, the woman, is fired from her work because she doesn't fit the beauty standard or care for the way she dresses, according to her boss, and she feels lost. When she's in the train station on her way back home, she sees the man in silver, the giant mechanical man performing, and she resonates with the wandering look in his eyes as he performs for someone who gives him money. When she's back home, Janice keeps calling numbers from the papers to find a job when a knock on her door interrupts her. Craig, her landlord, tells her that she can't keep paying rent late. He seems pretty guilty doing it, as if he doesn't want to be the bad guy in her story, but he has to do what he has to do nonetheless. The giant mechanical man is asked by a journalist to go on an interview with him. When he's back home excited, he tells his girlfriend that he'll be on TV. She tells him that she thought he hated TV, and he tells her this kind of TV is different because it's educational. She's not interested in it, and neither is she excited about him. She tells him that she is breaking up with him because she's tired of the robot and of the struggle. He tells her that struggle is a part of art, and she doesn't care. She hurts him by telling him she never believed in him and that she simply thought the whole artist's act was charming. Her brother then gives him a lecture about the importance of work and that the pattern of getting a job and being stuck in the hellish loophole of capitalism is nothing but a part of life. Janice makes herself a small dinner and has a bath. Her sister calls her and is overbearing, telling her to come to a party and bring some dip with her. Janice clearly doesn't want to go out and is forced to do so by her sister. When she's there, she's scolded by her sister for not just walking in and actually ringing the bell. Apparently, whatever Janice does is never enough or pleasing for her sister. The sister forces her to meet an author and self-help guru, Doug Doneken, a self-absorbed man who keeps talking about himself over and over and never listens or pays attention to Janice. When she's back home, she puts the TV on and finds the giant mechanical man that she watched on the streets doing an interview on TV. Tim shows up on TV as the giant mechanical man. He's asked why he started to do this work. He answers that it's his talent and that sometimes he feels like the mechanical man himself, as modern life can be repulsive. One can walk around like a giant machine with no brain, just a body wandering around in a haze, chasing time and life and never catching up. He reassures everyone that they are not crazy for feeling how they feel and that life is the one that's crazy, and not the people that are trying to cope with it. Janice stares at the screen in awe as she feels understood for the first time. The interviewer stares at Tim weirdly, in a way that suggests that he thinks the man in front of him is awkward, then proceeds to ask him if he can do the wave. Tim is a little weirded out and uncomfortable with the question. The man asks him then if he can do the moonwalk, to which Tim forces a smile and tells him that he doesn't do that kind of art. The interviewer keeps asking him to do tricks like that to make the interview funny, dismissing the message that Tim is trying to convey through what he does with his passion, and Tim is clearly offended and asks kindly to stop the interview. While watching from home, Janice is upset and feels for the artist, especially because she resonates deeply with what he's saying. The next day, when Janice sees the mechanical man, she approaches him and tells him she saw him on television. He doesn't answer her, but when she looks away, he sneaks a look at her and looks away from her as soon as she looks back at him. He's intrigued with her. She almost walks away, but decides against it and keeps talking to him. She tells him she feels the same as the people he spoke of. She's supposed to have her life figured out or pretend to, but she doesn't know what she's doing with herself, neither does she care enough to fake it. She then leaves, and Tim follows her with his gaze. He feels acknowledged. Janice is evicted from the apartment she's renting and asks her sister for help, who welcomes her into her house with her husband. On the day they accept her, they ask her to guess what surprise they have for her, and the sister, as usual, talks down on her sister. They offer her Doug's book about mastering communication. Inside it, Doug asks Janice out for dinner. Her sister tells her she can learn to talk from him since sometimes she can be awkward and doesn't do it right. Janice just swallows the mean words and forces a smile, and thanks them. She keeps looking for jobs in the morning paper, and so does Tim, who decides the robot job as a street artist isn't going to pay his bills. He applies for a position as a janitor in sanitation in a zoo. When he's cleaning the fountain, Janice approaches him and asks him where the administration is. Tim throws a few jokes in Janice's way. Not all of them land, but the interaction is weirdly wholesome. Tim ends up recognizing Janice as the girl who spoke to him when he was dressed as the giant mechanical man, but he doesn't follow her. Janice is overqualified for the job, but she takes it anyways as she's desperate. She sells grape juice. Janice and Tim meet again when she's having her lunch break, and he talks to her. They exchange banter again, then Tim tells her that it's depressing. The fact that human beings took millions of years to progress only for them to end up wearing silly hats and selling grape juice. And Janice, though she agrees, smiles and tells him she's kind of trying not to think about it that way. Tim realizes what he just said and apologizes, then tells her that she's not the only one who has no clue what to do with her life, and that he feels the same way. He then notices her book, How to Have Winning Conversations, and asks her whether or not it's good. She tells him she's having dinner with the author, which is why she thinks it's only fair she reads it. Tim looks away abruptly, clearly a bit bummed out by the fact that Janice is seeing someone. He decides to get back to work, so he bids her goodbye and leaves. When Janice is back to work, a client approaches her with his daughter and asks her for one of the grape juices. He grimaces when he knows the price, thinking it's expensive. Janice hands him the grape juice, and the man doesn't give it to his daughter but tells her to wait until he tastes it. When he does, he tells Janice that he's not buying it because it isn't grape juice, but grape drink. His daughter asks him again for the drink, but he tells her they're not buying it because it contains too much sugar. The small daughter ends up shouting at her dad and calling him an offensive and racist name, Indian giver, then she walks away. The father, upset with his daughter, lets it out on Janice, who apologizes even though she did nothing wrong and stutters throughout her apology. He mocks her stutter rudely, spitting that she needs to get a life, and walks off muttering under his breath. That night she dreams of herself begging George, her ex-boss, to rehire her. In the middle of the interview, she starts losing her teeth, and then she wakes up, terrified to find her sister's husband on the treadmill in her room. The next day, Janice can't help but cheer up when she sees Tim. She jokes with him, and when they're talking, they see a man poking one of the monkeys, and Janice is upset that the man is doing that to a helpless animal. When they ask the man to stop doing what he's doing, the man acts crudely toward Janice and then mocks Tim. Janice, angry, takes the broom from Tim and starts poking the man harshly, and continuously with it until security rushes in and pulls the man away. Tim pulls Janice, slightly laughing, amused at her shenanigan. The two were called to the administration, and while waiting for the director of the zoo, Janice admits that she cannot afford to lose her job. She adds that the monkeys could use more protection since everyone has easy access to them. Tim reassures her in hopes of making her worry less. As soon as the director walks in, Tim tells her that if there's anyone that should be fired, it's him because he started the fight. But the director tells him no one is getting fired and that she actually appreciates them stepping up and helping the monkeys, but they should call security instead next time. Janice thanks the woman and starts leaving, when Tim stops her by telling the director that Janice has a suggestion for her. The director urges her to speak, and she does. She tells her to move the rail back or put up a tree. Anything to put space between the animals and the people, since some people can't help but yell at them when they see them asleep. She tells her that the animals need more protection, especially the babies, and Tim stands by her and supports her opinion. The director admits that she didn't know that the animals were exposed like that, but they tell her that, indeed, they are, and so the director thanks them for letting her know, and promises them that she'll take what they noted into consideration, and let the habitat coordinator know. Tim smiles at her proudly. Janice is dragged by her sister and brother-in-law to Doug's show, promoting his book. Doug obviously talks superficially and is as overbearing as Janice's sister, even more since he goes as far as making fun of a member of the audience. He also suggests to stack the cards in your deck. If you have nothing to talk about yourself, he says. This shallow, self-absorbed advice reflects our reality, and criticizes the whole toxic positivity culture that we see a lot in self-help gurus today. Doug tells Janice that the dinner offer still stands. When she doesn't answer him, he doesn't take a hint and offers her tomorrow night as timing. And as she's still thinking of how to kindly reject him, her sister answers for her and tells him that that's perfect for Janice, yet again taking decisions on her behalf and trying to help her in her own way, disregarding everything her sister tells her and not paying attention to her body language or discomfort. The husband and wife thank Doug again, then they tell Janice that they've found the perfect man for her, and that they're on her team. On their way home, Janice spots the giant mechanical man, and she still can't tell that it's Tim. But yet again, the man gives her hope in the fact that she's not alone and that it's okay to not be okay, that she's not wrong. The following day, Tim catches up with Janice to tell her that she forgot her book, the one written by Doug. He also apologizes for going all philosophical in the Arctic castle, where he told her about how humans evolved for years, only for them to end up in this whole capitalistic mechanical cycle of messes. He tells her that it's nonsense, but she tells him not to be sorry and that it made sense to her, since she literally has no clue what she's doing in life. He tells her that neither does he. She retorts that she's talking about her life, how she doesn't want to sell grape juice or go on dates with the cheesehead. He simply asks her why she's doing all of it, and she says she doesn't know, as if she's stuck in it. That since she has no clue what she's doing therefore, she's trying to follow what everybody else is doing in hopes of getting a grip, but she just can't. Because what else is she going to do? She needs a job. She's living with her sister, and her sister won't leave her alone. What's the point of you, Janice? What are you doing? What's your value? Tim says, assuming that's what her sister tells her all the time, and he's not wrong, as Janice blows up laughing and tells him he sounds just like her sister. To which he answers that that's exactly what his girlfriend tells him too. Janice is as bummed out as Tim was when she realizes that he has a girlfriend. But as she's walking away and heading back home, he tells her out of nowhere that what he meant is his ex-girlfriend, as in he's single, and Janice awkwardly waves him off and keeps walking. When she's back home, she finds Doug waiting for her and spending time with her brother-in-law. He takes her on a date, and he, as usual, talks about himself on and on, never giving her a chance to speak even when he asks her questions. He asks her to tell him about her latest dream. When she tells him about the nightmare about her teeth falling off all of a sudden, he calls her crazy and dismisses her, telling her to buy his book on dreams, then looks at the menu for dessert. In the meantime, we see Tim's girlfriend back at his house to gather her stuff. She apologizes for hurting him and telling him she never believed in him. He tells her that it's okay and that she doesn't have to be sorry, that she kind of had a point and that he's quitting the whole Mechanical Man show. She tells him that he shouldn't quit, but he insists that it's a useless talent. But she doesn't back away, telling him that she was angry when she said what she said and that what he does will eventually evolve. She admires how he never sees the finish line and does what he does without overthinking like most people would do. He apologizes for letting her down and for not being enough, but she tells him that he didn't let her down and that they simply grew in different directions. She adds that she would really love to remain friends with him, to which he nods and smiles. The screen takes us back to Janice, still stuck on the date with Doug, who is still unsurprisingly so talking about himself and laughing at his own jokes. Janice feels even more so unseen by him. While walking out, she stumbles upon Tim, who's in the restaurant's bar, to get a drink. He invites her for a drink, but then Doug, who went to grab his jacket, catches up to her, so she introduces the two men to each other, then looks away awkwardly. Tim saves her the trouble of explaining herself and bids her goodbye, and she walks out of the restaurant with Doug. The next day, Tim watches the penguins in the Arctic castle at the zoo when Janice catches up with him, and they watch the penguins together. They bring up the topic of last night, and Janice tells Tim that she was just hanging out with Doug, implying that it was nothing serious, to which Tim replies that they should hang out together. In disbelief at first, Janice asks him who he's talking about just to make sure, and Tim tells her he's talking about her, and himself. Janice agrees right away, and he suggests tomorrow night as timing. He invites her to a party with his friends, and she says yes happily, then they get back to watching the penguins again. At home, Janice is seen on the treadmill fast walking when her sister comes into her room and suggests level 7, and reaches for the treadmill, to which Janice says that she's fine with the speed. Janice is clearly finally getting her life together and setting goals and boundaries for herself. Her sister smiles at her suggestively, and Janice asks her what she's making that face for. She tells her she has good news and that Doug is inviting them on Tuesday night for dinner. Janice is about to express that she has no desire or interest in seeing the man, but Gil interrupts her and tells her that she's not letting her say no to the date. When Janice doesn't answer, Gil ups the speed of the treadmill and tells her sister that Doug Doneken likes his girls slim, then walks out, leaving a struggling, breathless Janice behind her. At night, Janice goes with Tim to the party he invited her to and is introduced to his friends, a bunch of artsy and accepting people who welcome her, and tell her they've heard a lot about her from Tim. They spend the night dancing and talking, and it's the most fun Janice has had in so long. The birthday girl then blows the candles out, then tells everyone who came to the party that she's more than grateful, and that they are like a family to her. She then proceeds to tell them that it only takes one person to make you feel valid and loved and that her man does that to her. When she speaks of that special person, Tim can't take his eyes off Janice, who is clearly touched by the speech of the birthday girl. Tim and Janice then hang out by the bar, sharing warm drinks and laughing. Tim asks Janice questions about herself, and unlike the cheesehead, Doug, he listens and actually cares about her upbringing and her childhood. He finds out she's adopted and asks her what that's like, and she answers sincerely. After that, they eat a whole pie and share it together. Another thing that Tim does better than Doug, not caring whether she gains weight or not. He sees her for herself and admires her as she is, not trying to change anything about her. He even admits that he had a dream of his teeth falling off, which she admits that she had as well and that, as silly as it was, terrified her. He explains to her that teeth are some of the most robust bones in a human, that they are used to bite and chew, and that by losing them in a dream, it meant you felt weak. yet again, outdoing Doug. The two end up getting home and talking more about their interests. Eventually, Janice tells Tim that she wants to kiss him as they are relaxing on his sofa, and he's taken by surprise initially, but then approaches her, and they share an intimate kiss. They spend the night together, and Tim admits to Janice that he cares about her, that he likes her, and compliments how sensible and observant she is. He admits that he appreciates her honesty and how she doesn't pretend to know what she's doing, that she acknowledges that she's lost and is not afraid of showing vulnerability. The two are happy together. At work, they hang out all the time, and Janice invites Tim to a silent movie, something he's passionate about as much as she is. She also admits to her boss that she hates her job and that she can do more, so she's assigned the role of an assistant habitat coordinator, something she discovers a new passion for. The happiness doesn't last, though, since Gil forces her sister again to go on another dinner with Doug. When Doug and Janice are walking down the street together, he kisses her and wraps his hand around her. They pass by the giant mechanical man who sees them and is hurt, thinking that Janice is betraying him. That night, Tim even dreams of himself losing his teeth. He feels vulnerable and weak, and he ends up not even attending the date with Janice to the silent movie. Her sister and her husband-in-law, yet again trying to help Janice and make decisions about her life for her, invite Doug to the date instead so she feels better. But Janice loses it and admits to Gil that she's not interested and doesn't feel helped at all by her, that she feels suffocated and trapped. Her sister initially expresses that she's very displeased with her, then eventually starts listening. Janice tells her that she needs to stop talking down to her and that if she really wants to help her, she needs to be her little sister as she should be and that that's what she needs, not Doug or anybody else. When Gil starts actually listening and caring, Janice tells her that she's in love with Tim and doesn't know what went wrong or why he didn't show up. Gil is finally hearing her sister instead of assuming what's suitable for her and expressing her sorrow. She asks her how she could help, and Janice admits she'd like some time on her own, so Gil gives her space. When she returns home, she sees the mechanical man again. She approaches him. She tells him that she sometimes feels invisible, but that she recently heard someone say that it takes one person to see you, for you to feel visible and find your way, for only one person to believe in you, for you to get your faith back in yourself, and to feel like you belong. She tells him that she knows that that's true because she felt it when she went out with her coworker, that what she felt with him was different. When she looks up at the mechanical man, he looks back at her. She recognizes him instantly, and when she calls his name, he holds his hand up for her to take it, and she does, smiling at him.